The bell above his corner shop jingled, but it wasn't customers stepping in. Three boys, laughter sharp as knives, stormed the aisles. When they left, shelves lay bare, the old man bleeding from a shove. He thought kindness had died. He had no idea who was about to answer. Before we start this story, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Also, please subscribe to the channel. It will help us to bring you more inspiring stories every day. Elliot Harmon had run Harmon's Market for 40 years, a small corner shop in Millstone, Oregon. He sold everything from milk and bread to bolts and nails. His shelves lined more with memory than profit. His shop wasn't just a store, it was the heartbeat of the block. Kids bought penny candy. Neighbors picked up flour on credit when times were tough. And Elliot always had time for a chat. At 72, his hands shook slightly, and his knees ached when the weather turned cold. Still, every morning at 6 sharp, he turned the key and flicked on the neon open sign. His late wife, Margaret, used to sit behind the register, humming softly as she knitted. Since she passed, Elliot carried the store alone, his grief tucked between jars of honey and shells of soup. Customers still smiled, but fewer came these days, with big box stores swallowing the town's trade. Yet Elliot kept the doors open, not for money, but because this shop was his last tether to belonging. That December evening, Elliot was closing up early. The streets shimmered with frost, Christmas lights blinking lazily across cracked windows. He had just swept the front mat when the door slammed open. 3 teenagers barged in, faces shadowed under hoodies, voices loud and mocking. "Old man, still running this dump?" one sneered, kicking over a display of canned beans. Elliot straightened, broom trembling in his hand. "It's closing time, boys. Come back tomorrow." But tomorrow was never their plan. They swept down the aisles, shoving snacks into backpacks, knocking jars to the floor. Elliot rushed forward, trying to block the counter. A shove sent him sprawling, his back cracking against the cold tile. Coins scattered from the register as laughter filled the tiny space. By the time the bell jingled again, they were gone, leaving the shop wrecked shelves stripped, glass shattered, dignity fractured. Elliot lay there, staring at the ceiling, wondering if his life's work had just ended in the span of 10 cruel minutes. The next morning, neighbors peeped in, eyes wide, voices low. "Her kids did it," one muttered. Another shook her head. "Not worth rebuilding. Just let it go." Elliot swept glass into a pan, jaw tight. His hands trembled, but it wasn't from age, it was humiliation. The shelves, once neatly stocked, stood hollow. The cash register clung to a single crumpled bill. Worst of all was the silence. No Margaret humming, no children laughing, just echoes of what had been stolen. He sat behind the counter, bruised ribs aching, staring at the worn photograph taped to the register. Margaret smiling in summer light. "I tried, Maggie," he whispered. "But maybe it's time." That afternoon, he hung a handwritten sign in the window, closed until further notice. The ink bled from the weight of his hand. By evening, the lights of Harmon's Market went dark. To the town, it looked like another small business folding. To Elliot, it felt like surrender. News traveled fast in Millstone. By the weekend, whispers grew. Old Harmon finally shut down. Some pitied him, others shrugged. A few even laughed, calling him foolish for clinging to a relic shop in a world of chain stores. Elliot stayed inside, curtains drawn, the shop's silence pressing on him like stone. He brewed tea he didn't drink, his thoughts circling the same ache. 40 years erased in one night of cruelty. When the phone rang, it was his daughter, calling from Seattle. He told her nothing, masking the pain with practiced cheer. After he hung up, he stared at the door, its brass handle dulled by years of customers. He could still hear the echoes of the boys' laughter, cruel and sharp. He clenched his fists, but the fight in him felt drained. He wasn't angry at the boys. Not really. He was angry at the world that no longer cared if men like him disappeared quietly. On Sunday evening, a sound broke the quiet, the low, thunderous growl of engines. Elliot froze, heart racing. It wasn't just one bike, it was several, their rumble shaking the frosted glass. Headlights swept across the street, cutting through the dark. The bikes halted in front of his shuttered shop. Elliot crept to the window, pulling the curtain aside. Leather jackets glistened under street lamps, patches bowed, helmets tucked beneath arms. Hellsangels. Not customers, not neighbors, outsiders. His pulse quickened, unease settling in his chest. Why were they here? What did they want with an old man's broken shop? He gripped the curtain tighter, instinct screaming to hide. Then a knock rattled the door firm, steady, not unkind. Elliot hesitated, breath shallow. Slowly he opened it. The cold air spilled in, carrying the smell of gasoline and winter pine. A woman stepped forward, tall, steady-eyed. "Mr. Harmon?" she asked gently. Elliot nodded, wary. She smiled faintly. "We heard what happened. Her name was Cassandra Cass-Doyle, a rogue captain in the Angels." Behind her stood a dozen riders, faces weathered by wind and miles. Elliot's throat tightened. "Why? Why are you here?" He stammered. Cass's gaze softened. "Because word travels. And because respect matters." Elliot blinked. Respect? He looked around his hollow shop, shelves bare, dignity bruised. Respect felt like a ghost. Cass stepped inside, removing her gloves. She picked up the fallen broom and leaned it against the counter. "This place means something," she said, scanning the faded photographs on the walls, kids holding lollipops, neighbors smiling, Margaret behind the counter knitting. "It's not just a store. It's a piece of people's lives." Elliot swallowed hard, stunned by the gentleness in her voice. "What are you planning to do?" he asked cautiously. Cass's eyes gleamed with quiet resolve. "We're going to bring it back. Not tomorrow, not next week. Tonight." Engines roared again, multiplying. By dusk, the street outside Harmon's market pulsed with chrome and leather more bikes than Elliot could count. Neighbors gathered on porches, whispering, their eyes wide. One by one, riders carried boxes, groceries, tools, lumber, paint. Inside, the Angels moved with purpose. Broken glass was swept. Shelves were hammered back upright. Cass handed Elliot a chair. "Rest. Let us work." Elliot resisted at first, pride prickling. But his ribs ached, and his hands shook. He sat, overwhelmed, as strangers mended what bullies had shattered. Maya, a tattooed rider with kind eyes, restocked canned beans, humming under her breath. Another biker patched the cracked window with measured care. The room filled with noise hammers striking, laughter rolling, voices calling out supplies. Yet beneath the chaos, there was rhythm, almost reverence. Elliot stared, disbelief rising with gratitude. He had thought the shop's heartbeat was gone. But tonight, it thudded louder than ever, carried on the roar of engines and the strength of strangers stopped by midnight. Shelves gleamed with fresh goods, fruit stacked, milk chilled, candy jars refilled to the brim. A new counter, built from polished oak, stood firm where the old one had cracked. The Angels worked as if repairing more than glass. They were restoring dignity. Cass approached Elliot, handing him a fresh apron. "Try it on," she said softly. He held the fabric, eyes stinging. For the first time since Margaret's passing, he felt seen not as an old man fading, but as someone worth rebuilding for. Outside, engines still rumbled, more arriving. The number of bikes doubled, then tripled, until nearly 200 lined the street, chrome glinting under street lamps. The whole town woke to the spectacle. Curtains peeled back, mouths gaped. Whispers rose. Why would they help him? Elliot stood at the doorway, apron in hand, staring at the sea of bikes. The answer was simple, yet profound. Because sometimes respect isn't given. It's earned and then fiercely protected. Morning broke, pale light spilling across Harmon's Market. The bell above the door jingled, this time not with cruelty, but with wonder. Children tiptoed inside, eyes wide at the candy jars restored. Neighbors followed, murmuring disbelief as they scanned the freshly painted walls and stocked shelves. Elliot stood behind the counter, apron tied neatly, tears slipping down weathered cheeks. "You're open?" a boy asked shyly. Elliot nodded, voice thick. "We're open." Cass leaned against the wall, arms crossed, watching quietly. The townsfolk cast wary glances at the angels, but all outweighed fear. When Mrs. Jennings, who had once scoffed at Elliot's outdated store, whispered, "Who did this?" Elliot glanced at Cass, then back at the townspeople. "Family," he answered simply. And though they didn't understand yet, the word carried the weight of truth. Outside, 200 bikes lined the street like sentinels, gleaming in the morning sun. Millstone had never seen anything like it. Not everyone approved. By noon, whispers turned sharper. Some muttered about gangs in trouble. A man from city council even approached Elliot, frowning. "This will bring the wrong kind of attention," he warned. Elliot straightened, his voice steadier than expected. The only attention it brought was kindness. "Maybe that's what this town needs." The man sputtered but left. Cass's eyes flickered with pride. For years, Elliot had bowed to the weight of others' opinions. But today, standing behind his restored counter, he discovered his voice again. Customers poured in, not just for bread and milk, but to witness what had happened. Kids showed off candy bags. Neighbors lingered, marveling at the sight. For the first time in decades, Harmon's Market bustled like it had in Margaret's day. Elliot glanced at her photo by the register, whispering under his breath, "We're still here, Maggie." We made it. The shop rang with laughter and chatter, drowning out the memory of cruel boys' laughter. That afternoon, Elliot's daughter arrived from Seattle, rushing in with wide eyes. "Dad, what on earth?" She stopped short, stunned by the sight. Shelves full, customers laughing, bikers hauling in more supplies. Elliot hugged her tightly, ribs protesting but heart soaring. "It's not just me anymore," he said softly. She looked around, confused, until Cass introduced herself with a handshake. "We just lent a hand." Elliot's daughter blinked at the sea of leather jackets, suspicion fading into awe. You all did this." Cass nodded once. Every shelf, every nail. Tears filled her eyes. For years, she had begged her father to retire, to leave the shop behind. But now, standing in its glow, she understood. This wasn't just a store, it was his soul. And tonight, it had been given back. She kissed his cheek. "I'm proud of you, Dad." Elliot's smile cracked wider than it had in years. Sunlight breaking through storm clouds dot by evening. The angels gathered outside, engines idling, ready to ride. Elliot stepped onto the sidewalk, apron still tied, watching 200 bikes glisten under street lamps. He raised his voice, steady despite the lump in his throat. "I don't know how to thank you." Cass shook her head. "You already did by keeping this place alive all these years." Elliot's eyes burned. He thought of every late night, every bruise, every lonely hour since Margaret passed. He thought of the boys who had tried to end it all with laughter and theft. And then he thought of this, an army of steel and leather choosing to stand beside him. The engines roared in unison, thunder rolling down the street. Neighbors lined the sidewalks, jaws slack, as the angels pulled out in formation. The sight wasn't Menace. It was Majesty. 200 riders saluting a man who had thought himself forgotten. For Elliot, it was a miracle carved in chrome. The days that followed were unlike anything Millstone had seen. Customers flooded Harmon's market, some out of curiosity, others out of respect. Reporters showed up, cameras flashing. Elliot, shy as ever, deflected credit. "It wasn't me," he insisted. "It was community." Cass smirked from the back. Knowing he meant more than neighbors, he meant them. Letters poured in from nearby towns, some thanking Elliot for reminding them that small stores still mattered, others marveling at the angel's unexpected grace. Even the councilman returned, sheepish, muttering about maybe rethinking things. Elliot only smiled, stocking shelves with a strength that surprised him. He wasn't just selling bread anymore, he was offering proof that kindness could still thunder louder than cruelty. Each night, when he locked the door, he touched the photograph of Margaret. "See, love? They didn't erase us. They rebuilt us." And in his chest, where sorrow had once sat heavy, hope now bloomed like spring. But one question lingered. What about the bullies? The 3 teenagers who had wrecked the shop. Rumors swirled. They had been seen loitering, heads down, avoiding eyes. One evening, Elliot spotted them at the edge of the block, watching from shadows. Fear flickered across their faces, not of him, but of what now stood behind him. Cass noticed, too. She strode over, calm but fierce. "You boys tried to break something you couldn't understand," she said evenly. "But look at it now." Her arms swept toward the glowing shop, bustling with neighbors. The boys shifted, shame heavy on their shoulders. One muttered, "We didn't think it mattered." Cass's voice softened, though steel underlined it. "Everything matters. Every choice leaves a mark. What you took, we gave back tenfold. That's what respect is." They lowered their eyes, words caught in their throats. Elliot, watching, felt no anger, only pity. They had tried to destroy what they never knew how to build. Weeks turned into months, and Harmon's market flourished. Elliot found himself whistling while stocking shelves, a tune Margaret once hummed. Lily from next door painted a mural on the side wall, bright colors of fruits, bread, and a motorcycle with wings. Children pointed at it with glee, calling it the Angel Bike. Every Saturday, customers lingered longer, sipping coffee and sharing stories. The shop had become more than a store. It was a meeting place, alive again. Elliot felt younger, shoulders squarer, smile freer. The angels rode by now and then, a line of crones saluting as they passed. Each time, Elliot stepped outside, waving, heart swelling with pride. He knew they couldn't stay forever. They weren't meant to. But the mark they left remained, not just on his shelves, but on his soul. What bullies tried to erase, brotherhood restored. And in the glow of his shop's neon sign, Elliot rediscovered the truth. Belonging never dies. One spring morning, Elliot unlocked the shop early. Birds chirped, the air sharp with dew. As he turned the sign to open, a memory flashed, the sound of boys' laughter, the sting of his ribs against tile. He paused, hand trembling. Then he looked at the shelves, brimming, and the mural outside glowing in sunrise. The fear faded. He had been broken. Yes, but he hadn't stayed broken. A customer entered, tipping his hat. Morning, Mr. Harmon. Elliot grinned. Morning. Each greeting, each sale was more than business. It was defiance against despair. That evening, as he swept the floor, he realized something profound. Those bullies had given him a gift, though they never meant to. They had forced him to see the strength still inside him and the unexpected allies waiting to ride to his side. Sometimes darkness cracked open the door where light thundered and Dot Summer brought festivals to Millstone, and Harmon's Market became the heart of it all. A booth outside sold homemade pies. Kids painted chalk drawings across the pavement, and Elliot sat proudly behind his counter, nodding at each laugh that filled the air. The town had changed. Or maybe it had just remembered. One afternoon, a small boy tugged Elliot's sleeve. Mister, is it true? 200 bikers came for you? Elliot chuckled, crouching to meet his eyes. True as the sky, son. The boy's eyes widened. Why? Elliot paused, then pointed to the shelves, the candy, the smiling faces. Because kindness is louder than cruelty. Remember that. The boy nodded solemnly, clutching his lollipop. Elliot stood, a tear slipping free. He hadn't set out to teach lessons. He had just opened the door, one winter night, the grace he never expected. Now, his story belonged to the whole town, and it would outlast him. One evening, Cass returned alone. She parked her bike out front, helmet tucked under her arm, and stepped inside. The bell chimed softly. Elliot's breath caught joy, surprise, gratitude tumbling together. She set a small wooden box on the counter, the grain warm from her hands. Inside lay a patch embroidered wings and flames, the thread glinting like sunset on chrome. It isn't membership, she said, voice low, but it is respect. From us to you. Elliot lifted it with shaking fingers, the fabric heavier than it looked. He pinned it to the wall beside Margaret's photo, then rested his palm there, head bowed. She'd like this, he whispered. Cass's gaze softened. She'd be proud. The shop clock ticked, and for a sacred moment, time felt kind. We'll ride on, Cass added. But know this, you're one of ours. Elliot nodded, eyes bright. He had worked alone, grieved alone, fought alone. Tonight, he wasn't alone anymore. He belonged quietly, unmistakably right where he stood Dot Summer Thunderhead stacked over Millstone, heavy with rain. Business thrived. Laughter pooled in the aisles like golden light. The three boys hovered at the doorway one afternoon, caps in their hands, shoulders sloped. Elliot looked up, heart steady. Cass wasn't there, but her lesson was. The smallest boy spoke first, voice thin. We're... Sorry, sir. He set a folded envelope on the counter money, wadded and worn. We've been paying it back. Weekend shifts. Odd jobs. It isn't everything yet. Elliot studied their faces, fear, shame, a spark of wanting to be better. He thought of the night on cold tile, of the roar that rebuilt his life, of second chances riding louder than judgment. He slid the envelope back across the counter. Work off the rest here, he said. Stack boxes. Sweet floors. Learn what it takes to keep a place alive. Relief broke over them like rain. Yes, sir. Elliot handed them aprons. Start with the candy jars. Careful. They're memories. Autumn arrived on a slow wind. Leaves the color of harvest gold skittering past the mural. Harmon's Market drew breath like a living thing doorbell chimes. Children's giggles. Neighbors trading recipes between the bread and the tea. On Saturdays, riders sometimes passed in formation, two abreast, a river of chrome threading through town. Elliot stepped outside when he heard them coming, one hand lifted in an easy salute. They answered with a long, rolling note that settled warm in his bones. Inside, The boys now employees jostled gently over who tied the straighter bow on gift baskets. Elliot chuckled and hung a hand-lettered sign near Margaret's photo. Belongings sold here daily. As for Elliot, at closing, he locked the door and stood on the sidewalk, dusk folding the town into indigo. He didn't think about the night of breaking anymore. He thought about the morning after the roar, the rebuilding, the patch on the wall. Some miracles whisper. His arrived on 200 bikes. When Cruelty tried to empty one man's life, courage poured it full again. If Elliot's story moved you, tap like, subscribe, and press the bell icon so more true-hearted stories of dignity, second chances, and community find their way to you. Thanks for watching, and stay kind on purpose.